Hello, hi, and welcome to day 4 of this ADSelfService Plus online workshop series. I hope you're all having a fantastic day so far. Thank you so much for taking time to be part of today's workshop. Before we jump into today's session, I would like to do a very quick audio and video check just to make sure my voice is loud and clear and there are no issues in viewing the screen. If you have any issues with the broadcast, please drop in a message in the chat box. That's the only way I will be notified. That said, I also want to let you know that this is the last session of this particular workshop series. I've walked you through how you can empower your workforce and secure access to resources with password self-service, multi-factor authentication, and single sign-on. But today we are going to customize ADSelfService Plus and get it enterprise ready, which basically means I will be walking you through the administrative setup of ADSelfService Plus. But before I do that, I would like to give you all a very quick recap of all that we've seen in the previous session. Jumping to the ADSelfService Plus demo right here, I'm going to copy the session, the ADSelfService Plus demo link for you all in the chat console. You will be able to access the live demo along with me. Click on the administrative console, log in as an administrator. The first session was all about how you will be able to use ADSelfService Plus to delegate self-service actions to users within the organization. So under the configuration tab, you will be able to create custom self-service policies. I'm making use of the demo infrastructure here today by simply creating custom groups, custom self-service policies, as we call it, based on OUs and groups present in the Active Directory, and delegating self-service actions from password resets to account unlocks. And this can be done selectively based on OUs and groups present in the Active Directory, or it could also be done on a domain level, on a forest level. It can be a combination of OUs and groups as well. But more importantly, you can also choose to delegate self-service actions selectively to user groups based on administrative roles, based on departments, offices, based on compliance mandates, based on regional requirements, all that and much more, right? But for users to be able to leverage self-service, it's important for them to verify their identity, and that is where multi-factor authentication comes into picture. Multi-factor authentication is extremely important for users and user groups to not only verify user identity for the self-service process, but we also make use of MFA to log in and access endpoints, which is Windows, Mac, and Linux systems. We also extend MFA for the OWA login as well as VPN login. This is an important security feature that I would highly recommend, and something that I consider vital to protect user identities across organizations. You can also extend multi-factor authentication for the ADSelfService Plus self-service portal, as well as the numerous cloud applications, SAML single sign-on supported cloud applications that we give you SSO access to from within ADSelfService Plus, all right? Talking about MFA, you can extend the authentication options based on what works best for users and user groups in your organization. You will also be able to do it granularly based on the self-service policies that you have created. That said, another important security practice to follow is to notify users about their impending password or account expiration. And this is where the password or account expiration notification comes into picture. I am going to very quickly jump to my test infrastructure right here, my personal ADSelfService Plus infrastructure right here, log in as an administrator and show you how I am able to not only selectively send out emails based on the self-service policies that I've created. Stick with me for a couple of seconds. There we go, configuration tab. I have a bunch of self-service policies that I have created, but the advantage of this particular module as a security feature is that you will be able to notify the entire domain, irrespective of your licensing, irrespective of whether you are an existing ADSelfService Plus customer or not. This is a 100% free module, which also means you will be able to notify every single user across your organization about their impending password or account expiry, and ensure that there aren't any password expired user accounts or stale accounts on an organization level. Moving on, I am going to definitely talk about the password policy enforcer as well. I have customized different password policies for different user groups, but the advantage here, once again, is that I will be able to enforce this across the Gina CP screen, the ADUC console, display it across the reset and change password pages. And this includes the web browser, the mobile app, the mobile browser, and the Gina CP screen. And interestingly, I can work with advanced password policies, which include restricting dictionary words, restricting predictable patterns, restricting characters from the username, restricting characters from the previous password, the old password itself. You can also enforce the passphrase rule, wherein a user's password, if longer than 15 characters, 20 characters or more, once again, customizable, will override all the complexity rules that you have enabled right here. All right, so once again, a great security practice to follow, something that I highly, highly recommend. We also spoke about password synchronization and single sign-on in the last session, the third session. Extremely important, especially if you work with multiple business applications that users need access to, but extremely handy as well if you'd like to provide selective access to users and user groups in your organization, which means only the right group, only the right user roles have access to specific applications. You can also choose to synchronize passwords between Office 365, Salesforce, and multiple other applications with your native Active Directory. In terms of single sign-on, two big advantages here is that one, users will be able to use Active Directory as an authentication source to log in and access their machines on a daily basis. Log in and access their applications on a daily basis. The second most important aspect of single sign-on that ADSelfService Plus uniquely provides is you can use the single sign-on module to simply enable multi-factor authentication for more than 100 pre-configured applications. But that said, it's not limited to 100 applications. You can enable multi-factor authentication for any custom SAML application on premises and on the cloud. All right. I did walk you through conditional access as well, where in spite of granularly providing permissions and access to users and user groups in the organization, you can also choose to enable conditional access rules where you predefine certain conditions. And this could, in other words, be called as risk factors, which could basically disallow a particular user logging in from malicious IP addresses, locations, devices, or during non-business hours from having access to any of these self-service features that you delegate to users and user groups within the organization. So the application will basically use its intelligence to decide whether a user logging in at a particular time from a particular country and a particular device. So device-based restrictions can be device specific, which is computer object specific, as well as platform specific, as well as network restrictions. This could be based on IPs, IP ranges, static IPs as well. And if all goes well, the user will automatically be given full access. But if not, the application will either block access if the risk factor is high, or choose to limit access or increase MFA to the self-service features that you have delegated to users in your organization, access to endpoints and single sign-on applications included. These are great security practices, especially if you have users in your organization to whom you would like to delegate password self-service actions, all right? A very quick walkthrough of the directory self-service module as well. You will be able to customize your self-update layout. By default, there is a layout available, but if you'd like to customize the self-update layout for users in your organization, granularly enable self-update layouts, you are free to do that. You can enable employee search as well. This can be done based on different attributes that you see right here. And you can also choose to enable the mail group subscription. I do have a test mail group up and running. This basically allows a specific group of users to subscribe to and from mail groups. I'm sorry, a specific group of users in terms of users directly or based on OUs to subscribe to and from mail groups. Once again, this can be granularly delegated to users and user groups within the organization. Quickly jumping to the administrative tools right here. I did touch upon enrollment in the first session. Enrollment can be approached in 3 different ways. One is manual enrollment, where you send out an enrollment notification via email or send it out as a push notification to the ADSelfService Plus mobile app. After receiving the notification, users will be able to sign up with different authenticators, and this is the process. This process is what we call as enrollment. The second method of enrollment is importing enrollment data, either from a CSV file or an external data source, and this is what we call automatic enrollment. Here, if the data is readily available with you or available in a database or with the HR in your organization, you can choose to onboard users automatically with the help of the enrollment data that's available with you. This could be a simple phone number, email address, it could be duo security, it could be question and answer that you customize for users and user groups. And the last retort would be force enrollment, where you force users to log in and enroll with ADSelfService Plus with the help of a logon script. Quickly moving on, it's important for users to be able to access ADSelfService Plus right from their logon screens. So we have the ADSelfService Plus Gina Mac Linux installation that helps users to reset passwords or unlock accounts right from their logon console. But more importantly, enabling VPN settings will allow users to seamlessly reset password, but also update their cache over the VPN. So this is once again an important security measure that you need to follow, especially if you have remote users working on an organization level. That said, I'm going to quickly jump to the session plan for the day, where we will be exploring the administrative options that ADSelfService Plus provides. All right, so starting with configuring the most important security settings required to protect ADSelfService Plus from security attacks. There are 2 important guides that I would like to pass on to you. I will do that towards the end of today's session. But talking about security settings, we approach this in 2 different ways. One is security settings that are required for users in your organization. This can be called as pre-deployment security settings, where you enable conditional access, where you enable multi-factor authentication, endpoint multi-factor authentication, password policy enforcer. You can also choose to enable security measures that include notifying users about their impending password or account expiration. All right. But when we look at pre-deployment security settings, that is something that I am going to talk about today. So let me jump to the ADSelfService Plus infrastructure that I have here. I'm going to walk you through the administrative settings today. And if you do have any questions or issues in deploying these settings, please write to me and I will get in touch with you for a one-on-one session. But yes, starting with the customization option that's available under login settings, you can choose to hide the self-service admin login. So what this basically does is when users access the ADSelfService Plus unique link, the logon link, they will not have the provision to log in and access the administrative console. So ensure that once you restrict administrative login access, you share the admin login link, which in our case would be ADSSP-workshop :9251/adminlogin.cc with the respective administrators and technicians who require access to ADSelfService Plus. All right. We also provide the provision to allow or restrict admin portal access based on IP addresses. This is important, especially if you want only specific individuals to have access to the ADSelfService Plus portal. You can choose to enter the IP address range. You can also choose to include the individual IP address via comma separated values. This is a great security practice. But if you'd like to simply restrict an IP range, if you'd like to restrict user groups from accessing the administrative console, you're free to do that as well using the restricted IP addresses option available right here. That said, by default, you would have noticed that the domain selection dropdown is available in the web portal. You can choose to configure the domain list as well, display it, choose to not display it. You can also choose to customize it based on the mobile app and mobile portal logon screens as well. By default, logging into ADSelfService Plus is via the SAM account name, which is the default login attribute default AD attribute to login and access ADSelfService Plus, but you can make use of other login attributes, including the employee ID. If you'd like to exercise this for password resets, you are free to do so by customizing the login attributes right here. And you will be able to customize a user disclaimer. You will be able to enable CAPTCHA, disable CAPTCHA, selectively enable CAPTCHA across different pages and settings, enable audio CAPTCHA as well. And the rest is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to jump to the single sign-on settings. I have not enabled single sign-on for this particular application simply because I'm working with the test infrastructure. But you can not only choose to enable single sign-on, you can also choose to customize. You can also choose to customize NTLM single sign-on. All right, I'm not going to do this for now, but you can also choose to customize NTLM single sign-on as well as SAML authentication. And this can be done specifically based on different domains as well. You can also choose to manually enable smart card authentication, pretty self-explanatory once again, but if you do have issues, please write to me and I'll help you in setting it up for users in your organization. Jumping to the second most important part of today's agenda, to enable failover and secure gateway services. We're going to approach this in two parts. I'm going to talk about failover first and then move on to talk about securing gateway services. But yes, this is a great enterprise security practice for ADSelfService Plus. Under the Enterprise Essentials module, we support 3 failover features, starting with high availability. The only reason I've not enabled I have high availability right here is because I'm working with a limited edition of ADSelfService Plus, and the failover and secure gateway services is an add-on pack. All right, so what I've done is I've pre-configured all of this in another existing infrastructure that I have worked with. But what high availability basically helps you do is you have a standby or a backup server that is ready to go if your primary server fails. So right here you can see, let me jump to the demo setup. I'm going to jump to administrative console, move to, all right, I've surpassed my idle time. Once again, is a great security practice. Logging back into ADSelfService Plus, jumping to the administrative console. I'm going to sincerely also apologize for the background noise. I hope it isn't disturbing the session. There's some construction work going around, so I'm really sorry about that. Talking about high availability, you can simply choose to enable high availability. Your primary server is naturally the ADSelfService Plus infrastructure that you're working with. You can choose to enable you can choose to enable a standby server and make use of administrative credentials to verify or authenticate the standby server. You can also choose to enter the virtual IP and host name right here. Hit save, and believe me when I say this, you are good to go. Let me show you a very quick screenshot of what this looks like in my test infrastructure. So I have a standby server that I've enabled. I've given the user admin the credential to the option to authenticate this particular server. Given in the password, I also have my custom virtual IP address and host name. So what basically happens is when the worst hits, when the primary server fails, the standby server automatically kicks in, thereby not taking down the ADSelfService Plus access to users in your organization. Extremely easy to use, pretty straightforward. But one other approach or one other enterprise essential that we do recommend is load balancing. As the load balancer architecture explains, you are working with a web interface. And the load balancer basically redirects the traffic to multiple nodes available within ADSelfService Plus that you can customize, all right? So the difference between high availability and load balancing is basically in high availability, an entire new server kicks in when the primary server fails, whereas the load balancer basically distributes the traffic between multiple nodes. You can choose to add any number of nodes based on the user volume or the volume of requests that you naturally receive on an organizational level. Once again, I'm going to quickly hit the configure load balancing. Once again, I want you to notice by default, the primary node is available. I enter the load balancer port, all right, and I will be able to configure multiple nodes right here by simply adding new nodes. What I've done here is I have actually created 2 secondary nodes. And just for you to know how this works, the load balancer, which is your primary machine, your ADSelfService Plus primary server or the primary node, acts as a load balancer and redistributes the traffic, the incoming traffic or the requests to the secondary nodes that you have configured right here. So the primary machine in our particular case, let's say ADSSP-workshop colon 9251 steps in to act as the load balancer, and the multiple nodes that we configure basically takes in the volume of traffic. By default, we work with the work based on the stack rule. So node 1, 2, 3, 4 kicks in periodically. And this is how the load that comes into your machine or the requests or the volume of requests that comes into your web interface is balanced between multiple nodes that you have created. All right. One important point to note right here is that with the load balancing configuration, you cannot enable high availability as well, because what basically happens in a high availability is that the primary server, if the primary server fails, the secondary server will kick in. But in load balancing, since the primary server itself acts as the load balancer, when the primary server fails, the load balancer will also automatically fail. So we do not currently provide you an option where both high availability and load balancing can work hand in hand. You have to pick on either of the enterprise essential setting to decide how you would like to work with requests that the ADSelfService Plus web interface gets. So this can be based on the volume of traffic or based on the server that you have and how you'd like to manage the server settings. All right. That said, given today's infrastructure, one other very, very important part of security, one great security practice that we can follow today, given the cybersecurity space we're in, the volume of attacks, the number of compromises that are happening globally, one thing that you definitely can pay attention to that ADSelfService Plus with the AD360 integration can help you with is reverse proxy. Once again, these enterprise essential settings are not something that I've configured in our test infrastructure, but I have another machine up and running in which I have configured these. So what you basically have to do is access your AD360 infrastructure, go to the administrative settings and integrate with ADSelfService Plus, enable the ADSelfService Plus integration from within AD360, because by default, AD360 is built in with reverse proxy. So you will be able to make use of reverse proxy and extend the component, extend reverse proxy based on ports or context for ADSelfService Plus. This is a configured setting, a snapshot of a configured setting that I have up and running. Let me quickly show you how you can do this from within ADSelfService Plus. So you need to have AD360 infrastructure. I'm going to quickly access demo.ad360plus.com, walk you through how this looks in the AD360 online demo. Log in as an administrator. Stick with me just for a couple of seconds. All right. You will notice that AD360 has the independent point products available bundled up as a suite. The advantage of AD360, once again, like I mentioned, is that it's inbuilt with reverse proxy. Sorry about the lag. I hope my internet connection is okay. All right, I'm not sure if it's an application issue or if it's my internet that is throwing an issue. Just give me a quick second. Let me check my connection and get back. All right, looks like it could be a browser issue because I just received a page unresponsive note. So I'm going to quickly move on to talk about the rest of the features, and I hope that I can walk you through the reverse proxy settings. But what you basically have to do is navigate to the administrative console in AD360, where you will have to integrate with ADSelfService Plus, after which once you jump to the reverse proxy option that's available in the administrative console, you will be able to enable by simply checking the box right here. You can also choose to enable it based on ports, configure your context or configure your port, and reverse proxy kicks in. So that's once again a great security practice to have, especially if you on an organizational level are trying to eliminate the risk of ADSelfService Plus being exposed over the internet. Once again, extremely important for an application like ADSelfService Plus, because it's an end user application, which also makes it a lot more accessible for users from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, from different devices, different networks. And it's important to safeguard ADSelfService Plus and end user access to ADSelfService Plus. All right, swiftly moving on, I do want to talk about how you can rebrand ADSelfService Plus to suit your requirements. Once again, I'm not going to do this live, but let me jump back to the customize option available in the administrative portal. Move to personalize to show you that by default, the browser language is selected, but you can work with different languages. If I remember this right, we support more than 15 languages. You can also choose to change your welcome name. So once again, by default, it's the SAM account name, the default unique attribute. You can change the time format. You can choose to change the date format and also customize your time zone as well. I'm checking in from India here today, so I am at the Indian Standard Time. Pardon me. By default, these settings are also accessed from your local machine, your local IP, and your browser as well. So that is why I have the default settings up and running already. Talking about rebranding ADSelfService Plus, you can choose to customize ADSelfService Plus to look like how it would look in your organization, how an internal application would look in your organization. Pick the color of your choice. You can choose to change the browser title. You can choose to customize your image as well. So I have worked with multiple administrators who make ADSelfService Plus look like an internal application. And many a times I have been surprised at how great the customization is, because I'm used to working with the image, the default color. And many a times it throws me by surprise, because it's the same application that I'm used to, but it looks completely different. You will also be able to change the custom application logo as well. Have your logon customization by editing how you'd like the text to look, including which image you'd like to, which option you'd like to enable, which buttons you'd like to enable, and also have a background screen image as well. I'm not making any of these changes because I would like to stick to the default application personalization or portal settings, just to make it easy for me through sessions. But you will definitely be able to rebrand ADSelfService Plus to look like your internal password self-service application. The same extends to the ADSelfService Plus mobile app as well. You can choose to change the logo, customize the logon screen. You can choose to restrict mobile access based on devices, based on sites. You can also choose to allow allow users or the mobile app to remember login while logging into the mobile app. You can also enable SSL pinning for secure mobile app connection. Once again, a great security practice. The change password option that's available right here is for the administrative password change. By default, the password is ADMIN, but you will be able to customize your administrative password as well. And I highly, 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 highly recommend it. Once again, language customization is not just limited to picking the language that's convenient for users in your organization. You can also choose to granularly customize the text that are displayed across different consoles across the application. All right. So I will leave it up to you to explore the language customization option. I'm not familiar with any of the languages listed right here except English. So I'm going to play it safe, but you will be able to selectively enable different languages and also customize the scripts in each of these modules granularly. All right, this is in terms of the personalization settings. I'm going to jump to the product settings and now talk about how it's important to not only enable the failover services, but you can also work with secure gateways. This is where the connection setting comes into picture. Highly, highly recommend running your ADSelfService Plus in HTTPS. Since I'm working well within the organization's limits, well within the network, and since we also have ADSelfService Plus deployed internally, I have not enabled my certification. As you can notice, it's not secure. But once again, I'm working with a test infrastructure just for the demo setup. So I would highly urge you to run ADSelfService Plus in HTTPS. Apply your HTTPS certification, authenticate with the password. You can also choose to generate your certificate right here by entering the details. This is where my issue kicks in because all these mandatory attributes for me are exactly the same as my organization. All right, so you can choose to generate and apply a self-signed certificate for HTTPS. But what I would also recommend you doing is using the LDAP SSL, all right, or LDAPs in other words. You can also choose to make use of ciphers and TLS versions. We have a couple of them enabled by default. Proxy server can be enabled. Once again, reverse proxy is also something that we support, but you can also enable your proxy server. Under the general settings, you will notice that there is a session expiration time. By default, it's set at 60. Once again, customizable. You can also choose to deny concurrent logins, which basically restricts users from logging into multiple ADSelfService Plus console at once. The reason I've not done this is because I do make use of the same browser, the same computer to log in and access multiple user accounts at a given period of time, but you will definitely be able to enable these options for users in your organization real time. I will let you explore the rest of these settings. It's pretty self-explanatory, but what's more important is to enable your mail and SMS server settings. And when you do that, you can also secure the connection with SSL or TLS security or authentication, authenticate with administrative credentials. Once again, I have a test infrastructure that's up and running, the mail server right here. But if you have a mail server within the organization, please ensure that you secure the connection with SSL or TLS. I would also recommend you to enable the notification settings. This is something that I hear time and again from customers who have experience of working with ADSelfService Plus for a long, long time. They miss out on the product update notification. I would highly recommend you to enable the license expiration, the downtime notification, as well as the product update notification. Once again, when you click on the licensing option right here, or in any ADSelfService Plus infrastructure that you're working with, you will be able to see the build number displayed. All right. Make sure that your build is up to date. Once again, extremely important given the current cybersecurity situation or posture that we are in. Force 2, attacks, malware, ransomware are doing the rounds and it's crazy. So I would highly recommend you to upgrade your build periodically, and for which you can simply choose to enable your product update notification. We send out a mailer every time a new build is released, and it is at a frequency of 1 to 2 builds every month. And that is the frequency in which we upgrade the product as well. All right. So new features, enhancements, issue fixes, all that is released at a good frequency of 1 to 2 times every single month, then I would highly recommend you to enable the product update and the expiration notification. The dashboard is available right here. I've not talked in detail about the dashboard, but you will be able to customize the dashboard with the scheduler to keep a tab on logged out users, password expired users, soon to expire password users. You can also choose to have an AD synchronizer. The AD synchronizer runs right here. You can choose to update the domain objects or any changes that happens on an organizational level right here. But we also have a scheduler that's up and running under the administrative console. There we go, at a frequency of every hour, and it's updated for today. All right. We do provide the auto backup option as well. Map it to a storage path. You can also choose to customize the storage path link as well periodically. Integration in terms of ADSelfService Plus is limited to 5 applications, where 2 applications are internal. The AD Manager Plus integration allows you to work with approval workflow, where you not only allow users to take care of their own password management actions, password self-service actions, but keep a tab on these actions with an approval that can be done from AD Manager Plus. In terms of Service Desk Plus integration, since Service Desk Plus is our internal ITSM tool, you can replicate the password self-service tickets in Service Desk Plus to keep your help desk notified about what's happening in terms of AD password management. Splunk and syslog helps you with log management. Have I Been Pawned is an integration we spoke about. It's an API service which disallows users from setting compromised passwords as their native Windows Active Directory password, and thereby for their password synchronization enabled applications as well. You can definitely host ADSelfService Plus as a service. Pretty self-explanatory. I will let you explore. Talking about license management, this is also a module that is not often spoken about, but you can choose to restrict users. These users could be stale user accounts. It could be inactive user accounts. It could be users in your organization who are not currently part of the organization. Add them to the restrict users list right here. And what basically happens is these users will be restricted from accessing the self-service portal, which basically means the user identity exploit will also not happen through ADSelfService Plus. Another important aspect of being able to restrict users is to better manage your licenses so that stale user accounts do not take up licenses. You can also, restrict users and their enrollment will be automatically revoked. They will be disenrolled automatically. And for restricted users, the endpoint MFA, even if enabled, will not kick in. It will be bypassed. So you can choose to restrict users by including a list right here. And talking about security practices, it's important for you to keep a tab on what's happening on an organization level. So not only do you have access to enrolled users report, you also have access to licensed users report as well. So you can keep a tab on who actually is taking up the licenses that you have signed up for within ADSelfService Plus. And if you do come across users in your organization who have, who do not require active licenses, who are inactive, who are stale accounts, who are no longer part of the organization and are part of the disable or delete policy or the Active Directory cleanup, you can choose to selectively identify these accounts and add them to the restrict users list as well. Once again, a great security practice to disallow user identities from being compromised or being exploited with access to the ADSelfService Plus portal. All right, so now we have explored almost all the points in today's agenda. I'm going to walk you through the last part of today's agenda, which is to allow users to perform a live password reset, making use of the mobile app. Since I'm working with a personal device, I've chosen not to share my device screen. I'm sorry about that. But what I've also done is to make it easy for all of us. I have recorded ADSelfService Plus password reset live. I'm going to walk you through how this actually works from the ADSelfService Plus mobile app. So the first thing that a user needs to do is have their server settings up and running, which is exactly the host name and protocol that they have. Once that is done, let me pause that. The speed is a bit high. I'm going to go back. So once the server settings is configured and saved, the user will then be able to click on the password reset option that's available right here, enter the username, which is the exact same workflow as the Gina CP screen or the logon screen. They will have to enter the answers to security questions, which is what has happened, but it's not recorded for a security purpose. I want you to notice that I'm choosing to reset password for both my on-premises and cloud infrastructure. I'm entering the password right now with a check against complexity rules that I've met. I also have a password strength analyzer enabled. All right. And this custom granular password policy that we have enforced is also enforced for the ADSelfService Plus mobile app. So after one password reset attempt and not being able to successfully reset my password, I'm logging in as the user Sharada. Once again, this is a demo infrastructure that I wanted to walk you through. I'm entering the password for the user Sharada, so I will be able to actually log into the ADSelfService Plus mobile app. I will be able to perform a change password operation as well. And I also have the provision to enroll with different authenticators from within the ADSelfService Plus mobile app. This includes all the authenticators that has been enabled for me, but more specifically, make use of ADSelfService Plus mobile app itself as an authentication service for fingerprint, for Face ID. I will be able to make use of ADSelfService Plus mobile app for QR code scan, for time-based passcode, and more. All right, so this app definitely comes in handy for users who are on the go, who would like to make use of the ADSelfService Plus mobile app to perform changes while on the go by simply being connected to the VPN. And the VPN connection is important here once again, simply because not only will a password reset be successful, it will be synchronized with your AD server, but also the cache in your local machine will also be updated thanks to VPN tunneling. All right, with that, I have covered all the exercises in today's agenda. If you do have any questions, please keep them coming. I'm going to take time to answer your questions. That said, with this, I am wrapping up the ADSelfService Plus workshop series for this particular week. I hope the series was informative, but if you do have questions in the near future, please feel free to drop in a mail to me. I'm available at sharda@manageengine.com. Any help with ADSelfService Plus, or if you'd like to catch up on a general discussion on tips and tricks, best practices in the user identity security space, please write to me. And if it's beyond my scope, I promise to redirect you to the right resources. We also have a dedicated team of experts that we call the support team. They work 24/5. They're available at support@ADSelfServicePlus.com. And you can reach out to them for any issues with the application to help you set it up on an organization level, troubleshooting, all that and much more. That said, I'm going to take time to answer your questions offline. If you do have any, please keep them coming.